Assalamualaikum to the lecturer. We from Group 5 would like to present the title of the Marginal School. I'm the first presenter. My name is Afiqah Binti Asri. My matric number S54601. So for the first, I will present about the historical background of the Marginalist School. The beginning of the Marginalist School is that at 1871, the year Jevons and Majors published their influential books on marginal utility theory. Several forerunners predated Jevons and Majors in the use of marginal analysis in economics. The historical background of the Marginalist School. Serious economic and social problems remain unsolved. 2. The extremely uneven distribution of wealth and income created much dissatisfaction. 3. Industrial accidents often brought serious hardship to workers and their families before adequate workers' compensation laws were enacted. The trend of the 19th century in Europe was the developed three approaches of attack on praising social problem, and all three floated classical economy precept. This approach were to promote socialism, to bolster trade unionism, or to demand government action to ameliorate conditions by regulating the economies, eliminating abuse, and redistributing income. The marginalists opposed all the three solutions. Their theory with seemingly Olympian impartiality and concluded that although the value and distribution theory of the classical economics were inaccurate, their policy views were correct. The marginalists defended market allocation and distribution, deplored government intervention, denounced socialism, and sought to discourage labor unionism as either ineffective or pernicious. To the leading early marginalists, classical value and distribution theory earned in seemingly concluding that land rent is an unearned income and that exchange value is based on the labor time involved in the production process. The first idea was seized and expanded by the American economist Henry George. The second by Karl Marx. If classical economy could be made to say what its creators never intended, namely that rent is immoral and labor creates all value, then the science of economics was overdue for a thorough revision.
Assalamualaikum. I am Auni Binti Ali. I will present about major contribution economic theory and teaching. First, mathematical economy. Second, the basic monopoly model. Next, theory of duopoly, theory of diminishing marginal utility, theory of rational consumer choice, the law of demand, the law of diminishing marginal return, the concept of return to scale, work class choice analysis, and the marginal productivity theory of fact. after return. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhamad Afiq bin Muhammad Ibrahim. My matric number is S54592. Today I'm going to present the main principle of marginalist school. The first one is focus on the margin. The school focus its attention on the point of change where decisions are made. In other words, on the margin. The marginalist extends to all economic theory the marginal principle that Ricardo developed in his theory of rent. Secondly is rational economic behavior. The marginalists assume that people act rationally in balancing pleasure and pains, in measuring marginal utilities of different goods, and in balancing present against future needs. They also assume that purposeful behavior is normal and typical, and that random abnormalities will cancel each other out. The approach employed by the marginalists had its roots in the works of Jeremy Bentham. In that, they assume the dominant drive of human action is to seek utility and avoid disutility. And the third is macroeconomic emphasis. The individual, person and firm take the center stage in the marginalist drama. Instead of considering the aggregate economy or macroeconomics, the marginalists consider individual decision-making, market condition for a single type of good, the output of specific firm, and so forth. And then the use of abstract deductive method. The marginalists reject the historical method from German historical school in favor of analytical abstract approach pioneered by Ricardo and other classics. And the fifth is the pure competition emphasis. The marginalists normally base their analysis on the assumption of pure competition. This is the world of small, individualistic, independent entrepreneur, numerous buyers, many sellers, homogeneous products, uniform price, and no advertising. No one person or firm has enough economic power to influence market price perceptibly. Individuals can adapt their own action to demand, supply, and the price as worked out in the market through the interaction of thousands of people. Each person is such a tiny operator relative to the size of the market that no one notices his yearly marginalist. Demand becomes the primary force in price determination. The classical economists emphasize cost of production as the significant determinant of exchange value. The earliest marginalists swung to the opposite extreme and emphasized demand to the virtual exclusion of supply. In chapter 15, we will discover that Alfred Marshall synthesizes supply and demand into what may be called neoclassical economics. The type of economic is basically marginalism with a judicious recognition of the surviving contribution of the classical school. Emphasis on subjective utility. According to marginalists, demand depends on marginal utility, which is subjective psychological phenomenon. Cost of production include the sacrifice and extremeness of working, managing a business, and saving money to form a capital fund. Equilibrium approach. The marginalists believe that economic force generally tend toward equilibrium, a balancing opposing of force. Whenever disturbance causes dislocation, new movement toward equilibrium occur. Merger of land with capital goods. The marginalists lump land and capital resources together in their analysis and spoke of interest, rent, and profit as mean to the return to property resources. This had its advantage analytically and also combated the conclusion drawn by some that land rent is unearned income and unnecessary payment in order to ensure the use of land. Marginalists generally couple the reward to the landowner with interest theory. Minimal government involvement. The marginalists continue the classical school's defense of minimal government involvement in the economy as the most desirable policy. In most cases, no interference with natural economics law were in the order if maximum social benefits were to be realized.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Aidil Bin Ali Masra. My matric number S54644. Today I want to present the founder of Marginalist School. First, the founder of the Marginalist School is Francis Y. Edgewood. Edgewood was unrest economic in year 1825 until 1926. He is the professional of political economy at the University of Oxford, and he was most important contribution to economic science. In his Mathematics, Physics, an essay on the application of mathematics to the moral science published 1881. In year 1994, Edgewood published a diagram in the Theory of International Value. Next, the founder of the Marginalist School is Anthony Augustin Carnot. Anthony Augustin Carnot, a French economic movement. The Marginalist School was founded in the 19th century. One of the most important founders of the Marginalist School. His most popular work research into the mathematical principle of wealth in year 1838. And the last of the founder of the Marginalist School is Julius the poet. He studied in Versailles, winning a physics prize at graduation. He studied in the Avoc Polytechnic as a civil engineer and studied flow management in year 1848. Marginal utility demand consumer supply. First, value vary from person to person and utility those two on use. Second, curve of computation, early demand curve relationship between price and quantity. And last, monopoly and price discrimination, total utility is great.
Hello, my name is Muhamad Badrul Hisyam Yusoff. For conclusion, the Marginalist School developed new and powerful tools of analysis, especially geometric diagrams and mathematical techniques. The school emphasized the force of shape individual decision. This was valid in a world where such decisions were significant in determining the cost of economic activities. The marginalists explicitly state fundamental assumption underlying economic analysis as opposed to leaving them lacking in the background, as did many of the classical economists. The methodological controversies that the marginalists aroused resulted in separation of objective and verifiable principles that are based on state assumption from those principles that depend on value judgment and philosophical outlook. The method of partial equilibrium analysis championed by many members of this school was useful for abstracting from the complexity of the real world. This approach allowing one variable at a time to change while holding all other variables temporarily constant enable the investigator to dissect complex phenomena one step at a time. The problem of the immensely complicated society with its countless variables was terribly simplified and penetrate in an orderly and systematic manner. Several tenets of the marginalist school were subsequently challenged, and some were rejected. Keynes point to the alleged fallacy of composition associated with marginalist and neoclassical employment theory. The decline in purchasing power among its own employees would not affect it because the would normally buy only a negligible portion of its outputs. Also, critics argued that the assumption of pure competition was a reasonable abstraction looking backward from the 1870s, but it was too restrictive to be useful as competition declined after the 1870s. The marginalists view that the best government is the one that interferes the least beacon outdated as a new event transpired and new economic theory developed. There were few attempts at inductive verification at theories. In fact, hypotheses often were framed in ways to preclude testing. That's all from us. Thank you.